Now when you deploy the application to Azure, you will have a more elegant way of creating roles as well as your first user. But right now what we can do is when user clicks on the register button, or rather the register get action method is called, at that time we will be creating all of the roles if one of them does not exist. So how can we check if a role exists in our database or not? So we will have a if condition and we have the role manager. I added a not sign, so do not forget that. So role manager has extension method which is role exists async. Here we just need to pass the name of the role. So that's inside our helper class. Let me add using statement and we'll check for admin. So if the role for admin exists inside the database, we do not want to do anything. But if it does not exist, then we want to create that role. Now since this is an async method and we want the result before we proceed further, we can call getAwaiter.getResult, and that will make sure that we get the result and error goes away. So if the admin role does not exist, we want to create that. So role manager, it also has create async, which expects a new identity role. So we'll have new identity role. The role name will be helper.admin. Now when we create our first role, let's also create all the other roles. So we have patient and doctor. So it will first check if admin exists or not. If it does not exist, it will create all the three roles. Then inside the register post action method, if the result of creating user is successful, we can assign the role that user selected inside the drop-down right here. That will be inside role name. So if we go back, right here we'll say await underscore user manager dot add to role async, and we want to add our newly created user the role that they selected, which is model.rolename. So with this, let me run the application and try this out. And this time you will see a different error message. We see no service type for sign-in manager has been registered on identity user. Now we are not using identity user. If you close the application and examine the account controller with sign-in manager, we are always using application manager. So why are we getting that error message? That is because if we take a look at the login partial view, when we injected the sign-in manager, we were using identity user. So we have to change this to application user, which is inside models. We have the application user. With that, if we run the application, we should not see that error again. And great. Now let me hit the register button. Once we do that, let me switch back to the database and examine the ASP.NET roles again. And then for some reason the roles are not created when we hit the register button. Let me switch back to the application and go to the account controller. On register get, we are creating the role. I see what the issue is. Here we have to make this async task of iActionResult because all of these are async methods. So either await them or we'll have to use the getAwaiter and getResult. With that, let me run the application again and try this out. In order to execute, we just need to go to the register page and then go back to the database, and great. We see 3 records are created inside the ASP.NET Roles table. That means our 3 roles have automatically been created for us. Next, let me try to register our first admin user. So here I'm using the email admin@gmail.com so that it's easier to remember. With that, let me hit register button. Let me switch to database here and we will examine the ASP.NET users table. We have created our first user. It has a name as well. Now let me go back to the ASP.NET roles. The admin role ends with an ID of A3. Let's examine the mapping table, which is ASP.NET user role. User ID, we only have one user, but the role that is assigned to that user ends in A3, which is the admin role. So we can see that roles have been assigned successfully to our admin user.